and welcome to BRAIDAR, the business of beauty. My name is Jade Mparu, as always, and this is I think our 19th episode, which is really, really exciting. As you guys know, I've been doing this for the whole academic year this year, and we're coming towards the end of, this season of BRAIDAR, the business of beauty. So I think, yeah, I remember last week I was wondering if this is the 19th or the 20th one, but it's actually the 19th one. And the next week is the 20th one and like the final one. So, yeah, I think to just reflect a little bit on the year, it's definitely been really, really fun doing this show with you guys, just sharing like my thoughts about different things and my ideas about different, like, I guess, marketing strategies, different innovation sort of opportunities with like technology and different things. And yeah, just interesting initiatives that I've seen as well from different like beauty brands, fashion brands, and things. So definitely super grateful for that, and super happy that I got to do this before I left St Andrews. Because for those of you who don't know, I'm in fourth year, so I'm going to be leaving after this year, and the year's already like wrapping up. Like today's the first day of exam season, so everything's everything's like coming to a close. Everything is ending in a way, but it's been a great time here. So yeah, for any like person who's not leaving or any prospective student that's listening to this, I would definitely recommend applying for like a star radio show. And just, yeah, you can really talk about anything, and you can even like do it with your friend. You can do like co-host sort of things, and yeah, it's just super fun. And it's like every week you go to your slot and you just do your show, you just do your thing. So yeah, so I thought it could be cool to kind of do a bit of a throwback episode, talking about one of the topics that I didn't get to finish in a previous episode. And that was the topic about game design versus gamification for customer retention and for like loyalty programs and that kind of thing. Because if you guys remember, so there was, for those of you who are like, the real day one fans, like number one fans of this show, you remember that episode 11, I think it was the first time that I talked about this topic. And then in episode 17, I think it was, I re recorded it because, no, not episode 17, episode 13, I re recorded it because I lost the recording of that initial time that I said it. So for anyone who actually listened to the live, like episode 11, you guys probably already know a bit of what I'm going to talk about. But then for people who listen to the live episode 13, you don't know this second bit that I'm going to talk about. So I thought it was worth kind of finishing that up. I know I mentioned like I could do like a part two thing of that episode. So this is kind of going to be a bit of that. So for a quick kind of recap, the conversation ended when I was like, okay, so we've kind of looked at all these sort of mechanics in different games that have to do with like getting people to play every day, that have to do with like trying to create like a habit out of logging into the game and getting your, like, when you get a prize box when you open the game, and it's like a kind of gacha mechanic to get either coins or items or like outfits, different things like that. So we talked about all those mechanics, and we talked about obviously like the fact that it can be harmful, and the fact that it can be quite like all consuming, that sort of addictive like behavior that you're inducing in your users. But we also talked about how like it can also be fun if if you don't go too far with it, and if you don't like make it such that it's instrumental to the game to engage with these like, oh, check in every day, and then if you check in every day this week you get this, and it's a rare like battle pass kind of thing, and it's like never going to come up again, and it's like that feeling of, I guess, FOMO, and that feeling of like, oh, since I've already like bought the game, or since I've already like invested X hours into the game, I might as well just like fulfill this, what like this season, or whatever the package of like limited items is, because you kind of have that feeling of it's already yours, so why not actually like make sure that you have it? But in reality, it's not actually yours. It's just something that's available but has been framed as though you already own it. So, yeah. And what I wanted to talk about that I didn't quite get time to touch on was, okay, so we've looked at all this mechanics, but how would that actually look in a sort of practical business sense, or like for a startup? How can you actually implement that alongside your actual business? Like, let's say you're into retail, like you do some kind of makeup retail business. How can you implement those sort of structures and those mechanics into your loyalty system, or into how you're like building community, or engaging with your user base? How can you do that without like making a game in a sense? Because what your actual the core of your business is selling things physically. So how do you kind of balance that very in person, very tangible, very like sort of brick and mortar experience with a very like virtual and, I don't know, like emotion based and like social dynamics based thing, which is the online like world and that all that. So I think something interesting that I found out recently is that there's a company called TYB. It stands for Try Your Best. And what they're actually doing is essentially what I was talking about in episode 11 at the end. They've really found a way to make it easy for brands to harness that like momentum that they have on the fan side, or like the user side. So like, how if you go on the Instagram page of a particular like skincare brand or a particular makeup brand, and then you see their users are like in the comments saying, I love this, I use it every day, wow, this is so amazing, like, do you ship to my country, like, OMG, it's run out in the shop, like, when are you gonna restock? It's like they're in this sort of dialogue with the brand, right, and with the products that they're using, and even with each other, like as a fan base or like a user base of a particular product. So I guess the dynamic that creates is like, yeah, it's really sort of vibrant, and it's really like, the fandom of the company feels very alive. But then that dynamic is also kind of one-sided, because if you see the ratio of comments that people are putting to replies that the brand is able to give, it's not always one to one, like it's not always everybody's comment that gets answered, and it's not always like, you know every it's not the same level of intensity or like enthusiasm. So it's not something that's sustainable. And even if you were able to respond to every single comment on Instagram, I think like the optics of that as well, like ironically, it looks somehow like, it looks like, why do you have so much time like to be doing this in a sort of, I don't know, it just feels performative. Like, it's like, why do you have so much time to answer every single person in such a public forum? Like, I don't know. Even if it's a genuine sort of what will to engage with them and like respond to what they're saying, it does seem a bit too meticulous, a little bit too, yeah, I don't know. It just looks somehow, which is like, I guess, kind of like catch 22, right? But what TYB have set up is like a separate sort of platform for you to have all those conversations and all those like fan interactions to kind of occur in a space that's owned by the brand. So if you think about Instagram, right? People have their own accounts and their own like pages that others can comment on, others can like their pictures and whatnot. But the actual like forum where this discussion is happening, the actual building is Instagram's. You just have like, you're just renting space in Instagram to like do whatever it is that you're doing. So I think a lot of things in terms of like the effects of that, or like the the feeling of that, it kind of leads it, like it kind of goes hand in hand with that whole feeling of like Instagram being a bit performative, Instagram being a bit like, you know, stifling. It's a bit about like vanity metrics. It's a bit shallow. Yeah, I think that's the word I'm looking for. Like, it just feels a bit shallow and a bit like, you know, it's not. It doesn't have that genuine feeling of actually, this is a safe space for you to like post what you want, say what you want, interact with people how you really want to. You always have the feeling of like being watched, and then because you feel you're being watched, you behave in such a way that you know, it's different from how you would normally because you're behaving in a way to elicit a certain response from the watcher. You're not behaving in a way to like actually satisfy yourself as like a person and like expressing your individuality or what you're actually thinking. You're behaving in a way that's like cognizant of you being watched. And I guess in a way that's similar to the whole like oh, I forgot who did the like an essay on this, but it's like a very famous sort of feminist writer, and this whole idea of like the male gaze and how that's internalized by like like in films you can see how the female characters have internalized that in how they are presenting themselves to the world and even how they like view the world. It's like you're always aware of not just that you're being watched, but you're aware or like looking at yourself being watched by other people. So it's really, really like I don't know, there's a lot of distance between that whole experience and your sort of genuine self and like feeling, free, feeling just unencumbered by all these like different, I don't know, like stifling factors, right? So if that's how Instagram is, then I guess the opposite of that would be all these platforms that are trying to say like, okay, let's get rid of the likes, let's get rid of the like sort of panopticon sort of feeling, let's get rid of the feeling of like you have to be it's your page but you're still being performative on your own page because you're cognizant of the fact that I don't know um someone from your school is going to see your account and you know you want them to think of you in a certain way, or you're cognizant of the fact that when you meet new people you swap Instagrams, and so you want to make a certain impression on people, but that might not be how you actually are. It's just all these layers of like what I personally feel is not important. People are like, okay, yeah, like there's a bunch of us who kind of share that sentiment. Let's kind of strip away all the things that we don't like and focus on the things that we do like. And some of the things that they do like is the feature of setting up group chats, right? With just, your close friends, or just, even if it's new friends, it's people that you have a layer of comfort with and you don't have to be as performative, I guess you could say. You don't have to sort of put on some kind of act or some kind of show when you're interacting with them, and so you want to interact with them in a really um low pressure, low key setting, and that's what group chats kind of provide, right? Like you can chat like with words, but you can also like send gifs. You can also like send, I don't know what they call it, like memojis. Those like you make your face into like an avatar and you like put different expressions. That's you can do that thing, and then it's fun. It's like it's just fun. It's bringing that element of like expression and just like spontaneous like conversations, and then like the in jokes that develop from those kind of conversations and like connecting with your friends online is bringing that feeling back to the forefront of social media. Like for some of you who've been listening to the show for a long time, maybe you remember when I was talking about um, the materiality of like different social media platforms in what we call like Web 2, like which is the previous, I guess, era of internet like evolution. And by that I mean like, Facebook, like OG kind of Facebook, or at least when it like opened up to people beyond like Ivy League schools, right? And like MySpace or like Friendster, or like, you can list, the ones that you like or know as well. All these platforms they had their individual sort of quirks, but the main thing is like being able to chat, and then also your page being your page. Like I'm not saying people wouldn't dress up their page in a particular way because they know that people are going to visit it. But at the same time, the fact that you can actually customize the background of the page, and you can put like music to play, like when people click on your page and things like that, the fact that you can do that is already something that like makes it that much easier, or like removes a level of friction between you and being able to express yourself however you want. But then when you think about nowadays with social media, like mainstream social media, everyone's got the same white background. Everyone, like, no music's going to start playing when you open their Instagram page. It doesn't have that sort of zany, sort of whimsical feel of like the mid 2000s internet, right? Like there's a word for that aesthetic. I think it's called like digi core, something like that, digi whimsy, something like that. But basically that encapsulates what I'm talking about, which is, yes, it's kind of like a Wild West feeling, but it's also at the same time as being the Wild West. It's like your little sort of safe bubble that you can do whatever you want, and then you, I don't know, you just feel that sort of sense of ownership, I think, in a way, or like at least sense of recognition. Like you feel like this page reflects something about me, and I recognize something of myself or my personality, or like the stuff I like on this page. Whereas maybe now, if you look at your Instagram page, you'd be like, yeah, I can see I can see the sort of physical representation of myself in these pictures, but do these pictures actually speak to anything about like what I actually like, or what I actually feel in those moments, or like who I actually want to be? Or is it just conforming to, like, I don't know, is it just conforming to what, through being adopted by millions of people, and like the norms that kind of develop naturally through that like widespread adoption? Is it that I'm just kind of conforming to these, like, I don't know, highly sort of curated modes of like presenting myself that have been presented as a norm on Instagram, Like that's a whole other topic. That is a whole other topic. Like talking about how Instagram went from at first like just a photography based thing. It's like it's not about your face. It's about, I don't know what filter you put, your camera, ooh la la, all those things. Then it went from like that to like, oh yeah, like fun pictures, like, oh, my friends, oh, like, we're friends on Instagram, and you're my friend actually in real life. Like, that thing I said in the App Store episode about how the Web 2 circles on these social networks reflected your actual real life social circle. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's fun, like, it's omni-channel, in a way. But nowadays it's like, yeah, I don't know half of these people. It's like, it's a very public forum, but it's actually like you, it's just about curating a version of yourself, but at the same time it's on a very public like platform. I don't know, it's just kind of this element of dissonance that I think a lot of people are recognizing. So back to what I was talking about before. The people said, okay, let's take off the likes, let's take off the like town square, like someone in an article I read, I can't remember the name, otherwise I would have told you, like, and also the author, but the person said all these all these social media sites now feel like the town square where people are just raving and like ranting, like just opinions running rampant, like just people in your face, like shouting, like ringing bells, like it's just some type of messy place. So the people were like, let's take off that sort of element of it. Let's take off like the feeling of, I don't know, everyone's thoughts is kind of like intruding on your personal feed, whether you want, like, whether you know this person or not, whether you like what they're saying or not. It just shows up on your feed, and you kind of have to like, you look at something without yet knowing what it is before you've actually like read the words. And then once you've read it, it's like, I don't know, it's like it just feels a bit like all these things are encroaching on your like your time, but also your space. Like, I don't want to see all this nonsense on my phone. I just want to just see my friends, or I just want to post my own pictures, or I just want to see like what I actually like. So these new platforms are basically like group chats, but for like a particular theme or a particular activity. So if you think about, let's say, if you're coming to St. Andrews, right, and you're about to start first year, you don't know anybody, you could join a chat or like a group, right, or like a room. Yeah, like chat room, I guess is a good analogy. You could join like these chat rooms, and then it'll be like, oh, St. Andrews freshers class of 2028, and you join that one, and you're in a chat with like people who are in the same boat as you essentially. So you've got that common ground already. And the reason why it's different from just making a chat on Instagram is that I think there's something to do with the intentions of like why you come to different apps that affects how you behave and how you like, affect whether or not people act up to a certain degree on that site. Like you could set up a huge group chat on Instagram, but it's got this certain impersonal and almost like um hurried feeling, or like I don't know, transient feeling when you do that. Like obviously everyone's on the chat, but then it's not, I don't know, it just feels like something that you like dip into now and again, and obviously it can get out of hand like if you've added so many people. But with these new sites, like there's a site called Geneva where you can set up the chat rooms, it feels way less chaotic than that. And I think even just that feeling like visually through the user interface, like it's very like white, clean, organized, like conducive to meeting new people through this like chat room. Like it's literally built for that purpose. It makes people who go on the site, I think, not behave in the way they would if it were an Instagram chat, which is like, oh, I'm just gonna read the chat and not really talk, or like, oh, this is moving really fast, or this is like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it's just, and I think it's because that's not the main purpose of Instagram group chat. So it's just like one feature of many, and it's not technically optimized for that purpose on Instagram. But with Geneva, it's like, you know, you don't have to contribute to the chat, but it's just set up in such a way that it's inviting, and it's like everyone, all the people who've made profiles on that Geneva, right? They have set it up in such a way that it's for you to know about them or them to express themselves, and then you to use that information to be like, oh yeah, like I could reach out to this person, we can chat, we can like become friends, we can meet like in real life. It's meant to reflect that real life sort of dynamic of like, I guess like meeting people in a society, like how St. Andrews has so many societies, and you meet people who like that same thing in the society because they're like, why else would they be in the society? So it's kind of like that. And I think what's been interesting is that lots of brands are moving to these platforms like Geneva, or like, I guess you can compare Geneva to Discord. I think that's maybe an analogy that you can make, although there's some like structural differences, and again um like behavioral differences, like with people on Discord versus on Geneva. I think definitely people do not act up like half as much on Geneva. It's like, I don't know, it's just like, if you know how the venue where you're meeting or where a meeting is taking place can impact how like the decorum of the audience, of like even like the speaker. That's the kind of thing I mean. So yeah, on Geneva, lots of brands are moving there because they want to go from this experience, which is like, as I said, it was, which on Instagram maybe a little bit superficial, a little bit like transient. It's not like your actual own space, to something where it's more like, yeah, the brand has set up this chat room, and the chat room might be called Jade's makeup brand. But what's actually happening, like the actual interactions that are happening in that chat room, is like the fans themselves are talking amongst themselves. They're the ones like filling up the chat. It's not me being like, hey, like, oh, I think you should buy this thing, and then tomorrow I like say another like very salesy, very transactional thing. It's more like the brand facilitates it by setting up like the shell of the chat room, and then the people, like the fans, are the ones who populate it and like decorate it and make it a really inviting and dynamic space to be in, and like community to be a part of. So that's really what the brands want, because as I said, from the comments, you can see that people are interested. Like the fandom again is maybe not the right word, but the user base or like the consumer base who also happen to be really into it on like an emotional level, they are really active and really like want to spend time um sending stuff and talking about it. Like they want someone to talk about it with, and they want to share their feedback and like rave about this or that. So it's just something that's better facilitated in terms of like scaling that interest and scaling that like further. It's better facilitated on these sites like Geneva, where you own the sort of chat room as a brand. So yeah, going back to the kind of, I guess, outside frame of this frame narrative that I've somehow developed throughout this episode. So going back to the original or like first frame of this frame narrative of the episode, which was how can brands implement game design mechanics for customer loyalty. On Geneva, what people are doing is that they set up different chats in like one room or house. I think they're called houses. So let's say Jade's makeup brand is the name of the house. So when you go there or when you're added there, you know that what you're going to be talking about is Jade's makeup brand, and then maybe like, you know, you can talk about routines, your makeup routine. You can talk about like your favorite YouTubers maybe who use Jade's makeup brand. You can talk about like maybe even mental health, like how your relationship with makeup has changed over the years, or how like, you know, you used to think of makeup versus now, how you feel like, you know, how you know what I mean? Like how experimenting with makeup and just kind of learning new techniques or like trying out different products or like, you know, like color sort of combinations, how that like makes you feel happier or like, you know, impact your confidence or something like that. You can talk about all these topics and related topics to the I guess industry of the brand, but they also have different channels almost for challenges. And what they do with those challenges is that like maybe today's Saturday, they say, "Oh, Super Saturday, like show me your look for today, like show me the products that you use to make the look." And like basically what they're asking is like they're asking all these fans who are on the site or on the like in the house or the chat room, essentially they're asking you to make like a get ready with me video or like a sort of very short like TikTok style get ready with me and send it onto that channel, right? So essentially what they end up with is like a lot of user generated content, which is like sort of like what an influencer would do, but normal people who like the brand doing it. So it's almost like a big friend group doing some kind of fun activity. That's how it feels, right? Because as I said before, these are people who have already indicated that in their free time they want to like chat about this brand or like just the topic of makeup in general. Maybe they love it, like it's their hobby, you know. So when the brand asks them to do these challenges, it's already mapping onto what they're interested in and what they like to do. So they would have already done this without like being asked. But the fact that you're asking again, it just reinforces the fact that the brand is the one facilitating these interactions, and the brand is centering itself in these conversations without like dominating the conversation, you know? So it's like you can provide this space for people to meet, for people to again like express themselves, make user generated content, but that's different from like breathing down their neck and being like, oh, like paste the brand's logo in the background, like, oh, send it to us to review, or being like, you know, if it's an in-person event that you want to use for this analogy, it's different from you like putting the snacks out and putting like, I don't know, like paying for some kind of beach get together, like private beach, whatever. It's different from you paying for that and facilitating that and you know, decorating it and then leaving them to sort of talk how they want. Like I'm not saying, oh, leave them to just wander around. Like especially if your target audience is like younger, like teens or something like that. I'm not saying just leave them to like go missing and what have you. But I mean, it's different from that. It's different from you kind of like I don't know, cramping their style, just sitting down in the cabana and like watching them. Like it's just weird. It's just kind of like people don't want to express themselves if there's that like surveillance, as I said, like panopticon kind of experience going on. I think that's something they'd rather not do. So yeah, it's just a way, like these chat rooms with challenges are a way for the brand to do the first version, which is the non creepy version. So yeah. So back to the like question. How are they using game design? So where game design comes into play is that instead of just having the fans send like the videos of their get ready with me to the channel, and then you just have like this person sent this person sent that, you just have the thumbnails of each person's video. What what the TYB company has done is that they've gamified that process by rewarding fans for those interactions. And the way they've done that is like TYB is essentially a little bit, from my understanding at least, because I'm not like on TYB, but I've just done research around it. But it's essentially like Geneva, like with the whole different chats and like the same kind of feeling of collaborative, like chatting, collaborative, like conversations around like important topics to do with the brand or to do with products. But they've got an inbuilt like token system that if you send your stuff, like you send that get ready with me, you're getting an automatic like, oh, you got 50 jade bucks like for doing this challenge, you completing this challenge, right? So on one hand, yeah, they've already got the intrinsic motivation to make that video because they just like what what's going on already. But then TYB, through the like monetizing of it, like with this, instead of in-game currency, it's like in-brand currency. So with these in-brand currencies, they've kind of like got the extrinsic motivation as well. And yeah, so that's basically what they do. And they've also got like a sort of leaderboard set up, I think monthly leaderboards or weekly, I'm not sure. But a certain duration, you can see, as I said, you're already friends with these people on the platform because you've done like um chats with them, you've chatted about different things, and you can actually be very like pretty open and vulnerable on these in these chat rooms. So you've already got that kind of level of, if not friendship, at least understanding, at least like, you know, beyond acquaintances or beyond like, oh, I don't know who that guy is. Like, why should I care if they're number one? It's more like, oh, like you can see in real time, like your friends are engaging with this. And so it's just that feeling of like, yeah, this is a dynamic sort of fandom that I'm a part of and I'm enjoying being a part of it. And I guess on one hand, yeah, that does obscure the fact that it is at the end of the day like like it is at the end of the day incentivizing transactions at like as like the end of the funnel, like the ultimate goal of the business is to like sell, right? And I guess if you were doing like a management essay on it, you could talk about how these like you could talk about how community, not talking about TYB specifically, you could talk about how community in general could be harnessed to kind of like obscure this more transactional end goal. But then I don't think that would be like an ultimately bad thing. Like for example, TYB and the brands I've seen like use Geneva and all these things, I don't think that their obscuring of it is in any sort of malicious way. I think it's more so to like make it more fun and like something that can sustain itself. Like I don't know what the word would be. Like it's more so to make it such that it's like a to get the flywheel going of those sales and transactions in a way that the consumers like they want to do this. Yeah, that's how I would kind of frame it. Because again, they're the ones who reach out in the comments in the first place. So they want this feeling of like engaging with the brand on a deeper level. They already align with like the brand's values and what have you. So they want this, right? It's not exactly like they're being compelled to do it in a like addictive way. So I guess yeah, it definitely seems really responsible in the way that TYB and other brands are like engaging with this form of game design for their brand communities and stuff. So just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, so that's kind of one way that some brands are engaging with game design principles for customer loyalty. Because of course, like if you've got, you get 50 Jade bucks for competing at challenge, and you've been part of the community for, I don't know, like 5 months or something like that. Assuming there's a new challenge every week or 2 weeks, you've got a considerable sort of amount of savings, right? In terms of the Jade bucks economy and what have you. Um, so yeah, what a lot of the brands do, and I think on TYB what they do is like you can redeem Jade bucks for like discounts in the store, but you can also like some Jade bucks are more, they're less like currency and more like collectibles. So like a commemorative token or coin that gives you access to like maybe an in-person event. Like when I talked about the in-person brand activations in that other episode, like how, I don't know what brand to use as an example that maybe you guys would know, but just different brands that do in-person stuff for their customers. Like I've actually got a really good example. So there's a brand called Red Beauty Supply. They do like hair care solutions for textured hair. So they did some in-person activations, or like at least in-person like meetups for the community. I think that's what I'd call it, because I guess, yeah. Actually, I think it could be an activation as well. I don't want to get into like the definitions, because that's not the important bit. But the important bit is that they did this thing where they took some of their brand community and like I think ambassadors to a ballet class, like in person, just like something fun, an activity that has to do with the, not only the kind of um I think like interest of the target audience, and like that sense of, like on Pinterest, like a lot of people save ballet course stuff even if they're not like ballerinas. It's just that idea of like the practice of doing ballet and like the connotations, and I guess also the lifestyle. It's just very, I think, I don't know, it's just something that's like a nice event to put on. Hard to explain, but let's just keep it at that. Otherwise, I may go on another tangent to explain why. But yeah, they did that for some of their brand community, and not only was it like really fun, but also I think it just happened that the colors of Bread Beauty Supply, like their brand colors, are pale pink, and I think I believe pale pink and like a dark, either a very dark brown or like black, like in terms of the font that their logo is on. So it just really mapped well onto the colors that were like prevalent in their ballet class, which is like pale pink outfits with like dark brown and black, like either accessories or like the, I can't explain it, but when you see the pictures, you'll see like in the picture, like whether it's the background of the picture that's dark against um um the pink of the outfits, like you get those valences. You pick up on that, so even I think subconsciously, and it just looked really cohesive and aesthetic as like a brand event. So the tokens, right, give you access to stuff like that. So I think that's really interesting. And I think, yeah, I think it's just something that, again, it's very omni-channel in the sense of like it starts, maybe it starts offline in terms of the customers, before they become big fans of your stuff, they see you in the shops, right? Like they see your product, I mean, in the shops on the shelf. They buy it, they use it, and then they like it so much that they go online to talk about it. And then that online, that whole community thing, and then, with the UGC challenge, like, I mean, the user generated content challenge is then taking those interactions and that like the essence or like the spark of that fandom, or like the energy force of that fandom, goes from online interactions and chatting and things to in person again, because they have to do the like make the video. And then it goes online again when they get the Jade bucks, and maybe they get a coin instead. And then because they've got that coin that gives them access to an event, it goes from online to in person again when they go for the event. So what that whole like weaving in between in person and online, in person and online, in person and online, what that's called is omni-channel. And I don't I don't really know if omnichannel is like a verb or like an adjective or like a noun, but at least from when I've heard it used, it's kind of people use it in such a way that you won't know how they're using it. Like like it, that's just another conversation. And I think even people like in the industry, maybe they are still like, maybe there's various ways of defining it, but basically that's like the very very basic sort of explanation of what omnichannel is. But it's definitely something that a lot of brands across industries are looking to do, like even in terms of like supply chains, or in terms of like, you know, a grocery shop, like maybe they want you to start online in the omnichannel journey, and you'd be like, oh yeah, they've got the, I don't know, macadamia nuts that I want to buy. I can see online that they've got it in the store. So I go in my car. I walk there, like a bit more sustainable. I walk there, and I buy them in person, right? And then maybe because I've bought them using my loyalty card, it's like, oh, you get 10 Jade bucks because this shop is also owned by Jade. So you get 10 Jade bucks on your account, and then you redeem them online for a delivery purchase or something like that. So it's just, they want to make it like very in person and virtual, I guess. Yeah. I guess it's a little bit similar to, for those of you who know like Build-A-Bear Workshop, for those of you who knew Build-A-Bear in like the late 2000s, how you can buy stuff for the bear in the shop, right? But then because you bought it in the shop, you get the virtual version in the game. Like you could use a code to put it like you basically use a code from the real life like dress that you bought for your bear, and then you go on your computer and you type the code in the like Build-A-Bear virtual world thingy. Like I don't know how to describe it, but in the shop in the game, there's a place where you can put codes. So that's the thing I'm talking about, and you put the code there, then you can get that same dress for the virtual representation of your bear, you know? And then it's just so satisfying. And it's like, wow, I feel like I've gotten even more value from this purchase, even though like, you know, it's virtual, it's not like real, but you still got that emotional attachment to it and that sense of like, I don't know, like fulfillment in a way, or like, oh yeah, I've unlocked this other sort of nuance to playing the game which I didn't have before, which is like I've got this exclusive item, which I think is super super cool. And as you guys know already, like I've talked about this in great depth and at length in other episodes when I talked about like virtual worlds. You know, I will always like celebrate Bearville, as the best kind of example of this. Like, not only was it super fun, but it's just crazy how it maps onto all these like digital beauty, all these like Web3 metaverse, like metaverse in quotes, because as you guys know, if you've watched that other episode, it's like it's a very loaded sort of term, but basically the sentiment behind metaverse is what I mean. Like how it maps onto all these things that we really think of as new, but it's like no, they did it. They actually did it in 2000 and like what 8, 7. So yeah, I just think that's really cool. So yeah, that is basically what I wanted to cover today. I wanted to make sure I kind of gave you guys some examples of that because I remembered rather that I said I would make a part 2 to that episode, then I forgot, and then I moved on to other things. But this is definitely like something super interesting and super important, I think. Yeah, so we can look back in the future, maybe like next 5 years, and we can see like, oh, like have some of these predictions come true. Have these have things panned out that way that Jade said, or has it been different? Have people taken Jade's suggestions on board, or have they gone their own way? That's going to be the question. That's going to be an essay question in the future, I think. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I'm not going to talk about this like in any sort of detail, but another thing I think is super cool is like when, let's say you're on a virtual world, right? Or like a game or whatever. when the map has either seasonal like districts or seasonal like zones, or zones that like you don't necessarily unlock it. Like you can't, like it's not going to be like grayed out with a little padlock sign on it, because I think that's a bit, it's a bit overt and a bit transactional. But it's like you click on a certain thing, or you do a certain combination of like you of like clicks or buttons, and then you access that area, or at least that room in the world. I think that's so cool. Like I think that is just such a cool thing to implement, because again, it gives you that feeling of like, oh, there's added value in this thing that I've invested time slash money into. So it just strengthens that feeling of like in group dynamics, in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm part of like the the ones who kind of unlock this experience through like trial and error, or just through like, I don't know, a sense of like affinity towards the game, because it's not everyone who's going to unlock that, or like gonna know that that exists and like access it, right? So the ones who do, there's just this feeling of like, I don't know, like a feeling of, oh, I'm even more attached to this game. Of, although you won't explicitly like think that, but you'll feel that, because you're like, oh yeah, I want to explore this. I want to like make sure I'm making the most of this thing that I've unlocked. So I think that's super powerful, and I think, wouldn't it be cool if, okay, I'm not gonna say this next part. I'm not gonna say this next part. You guys are just gonna have to find out. Okay, just yeah, just keep an eye on the Braidar like social media and the website. Just I'll just kind of show you guys instead of tell you what I was gonna say next. Yeah, but yeah, I think I think reflecting on the show, it's, I almost can't believe that I'm not gonna be able to do the show like after, I guess after like next week, because the shows are wrapping up by the 1st of May. So next week is really our last episode, and I don't think I've really gotten used to the fact that after this I won't be able to like, just come on here and chat to you guys in the studio. Like, it's bizarre. That's so weird. I'm really used to it now. Yeah, so sad. But I think, like as I said, absolutely 100% so glad that I decided to apply and that I got chosen to do my show this year. And another thing I wanted to say was, yeah, so I was talking about last time about the songs of like different, like the Bratz theme song, like Monster High theme songs, like Boo York, all that type of stuff. So next week, right? I don't I don't think we will do that, because next week we are gonna have a lovely guest on the show. My friend Ellie is gonna be on the show, and she's gonna talk about basically gonna talk about like being in the sort of content creator space. We're gonna talk about that from like a student perspective, as in like someone who's not what students think about that, but like someone who is a student and sort of immersed in that. So that should be super interesting. And just a heads up, because I've already kind of talked about the basics of that in another episode, we're kind of gonna like just dive in right into like the specifics of like either what that's like, or like what the process of working with brands is, or that kind of thing, right? So, don't kind of feel that I'm trying to not take you guys along, because I have, but it's just like, you just get a certain amount of time to talk on every show, right? So I wanted to maximize that. And so to tell you ahead of time that maybe if you've not watched that episode, I don't know, if you're watching this like 10 years in the future, like 2034 or something, maybe all the episodes will be online. But if they're not, if you're watching this in 2024, then just like, I think a simple sort of Google search, what is the creator economy, or what is a content creator, I think that will like bring you up to speed. Yeah, just for next episode, if you want to know that ahead of time. Yeah, so yeah, i guess I guess that's the like main sort of thing that I wanted to talk about this week. But do stay tuned for next week, which will be, as I said before, kind of sad, but the final episode of Braidar, the Business of Beauty. I know it's sad, but It promises to be a really exciting one, and I'm so glad that Ellie can be on the show with us. And oh yeah, another thing is also coming up. There's some exciting news that you're gonna hear, perhaps next week or perhaps afterwards. But there may be some more content for you guys after Braidar has wrapped. So that is quite exciting. But yeah, you can still send, if you have songs that you want to be like, I don't know, you just want to talk about them, you can still send the name of those songs to the Braidar Facebook page. Not so much the Instagram, because I'm not going to be on there right now as much. But the Facebook, yeah, I'll probably be like checking that a bit more lately, just for complicated reasons. But yeah, you can do that, and then if you want, you can defend your reason, like, oh, I picked this song because it's objectively the best song in, I don't know, Monster High discography, like, I don't know. if you if you know like the actual singers, like the name of the singers, I think that could be fun too, because I really want to like, as I've said in all these episodes, I really want to like start that whole thing of like an actual community around not just the show, but like Braidar itself as like a brand. I want us to be able to talk about all these like nostalgic, but also to do with like beauty and fashion, all these things that I've mentioned on the show. We can just chat about it, and like you can bring your like how I talk about my faves on the show. You can talk about yours, and yeah, that I don't know. That's just fun. So yeah, I'm really, 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 really looking forward to that. And thank you guys so much for listening once again. So this has been our 19th episode. So stay tuned for the 20th and final episode of Braidar, the Business of Beauty, like the live episodes from the Star Studio in St. Andrews. Yeah, so stay tuned for that the same time next week. So that's 27th of April, 2024, 3 p.m. British summertime. So this has been Jade on Braidar, the Business of Beauty. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.